So today I'm going to show you how to reassemble and seal your 3-piece wheels. Okay, so the first step to reassembling your 3-piece wheels is to make sure your barrels as well as the surface of your lip and centers are all clean. You're going to want to make sure to take off all the silicone. You can just use a wire wheel or something of that nature to clean it off like that. And then after, right before you seal them up and start assembling back together, which would be right around now, you should just take some paint thinner and clean off the surface. That way there's no oil, grease, contaminants from when you're like touching it around and maneuvering it. So now that your mounting surface is clean, just do any touch-up work that you want to do before you put the wheel together. So, because these lips are polished, I'm going to go ahead and take my Magna aluminum polish and polish them up one last time before I put them all together with all the bolts. And you should do the same thing with the barrels if you have any touch-up work you want to do that you may not be able to reach or get as good of a reach with when you assemble everything. Okay, so now that all your surfaces have been prepped and ready to get sealed up, the next step is to actually seal them up. But before that, I want to talk about two things. The first one is sealant, and this is a 100% silicone sealant. This is what CCW recommends as a sealant, and the model number is GE5000. There's going to be a link in the description where to buy this at Home Depot. It's made by GE and is meant for windows, doors, attics, and basement. So basically, you're going to want to use this as the sealant in between the lip, the center, and the barrel. You know, some wheels they're assembled differently though, so you're only going to have to put one strip of sealant, and that's going to be between the barrel and the lip, and then the center just sits on top, doesn't need any sealant. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is thread lock. Some people don't use any thread lock. Some people use blue thread lock, and some people use red thread lock. First of all, no thread lock isn't that safe of a thing to do, considering that these are going to be the only things that are basically in contact with your car and the ground. So, and there's a lot of vibrations, a lot of heat, so your bolts could easily get undone. So you're going to need some thread lock. Then again, because they're on the road, they're going to get corrosion on them. They're going to get heated up, so it's going to make them harder to take off as well, sometimes. You're not going to want to have red thread lock on there, because after all that, it's going to be really hard to take off every single one of your bolts, because then you're going to have to heat them up, because the red thread lock needs to be heated up. You're going to need to heat them all up as well, just to take them out. So that's too far to the extreme. The blue thread lock is a good balance between both of those. It adds the resistance that you need in order to keep your bolts in, as well as it won't be a hassle to get them out. It'll just be like it's supposed to be. So blue thread lock and GE5000 silicone sealant. Okay, so the next step is to assemble the wheels all together. The first step in doing this is to put a bead of silicone on the barrel. The bead, you're just going to want to make it right after the bolt hole and right before the barrel actually starts to form and goes downward. So right in this area over here, that's where you're going to put a bead of silicone. If your wheels are assembled with the barrel, then the lip, and then the center on top, you're only going to need one bead of silicone. However, if yours are assembled with the barrel, then the center, and then the lip, you're also going to need an additional bead on the lip, which is what I'm also going to do. Alright, so now that there's a bead of silicone on here, I'm just going to get my center, put 2 screws in it. Remember the line in the center to match it up. RS's actually have this point right here, so it points to that actual point. So take that, line it up right there, line it up in the back, sit it down, shake it a little bit. Okay, so now that the center is seated, go ahead and put the lip on. The lip also has a bead of silicone. So we're going to match it up. The valve stem is over here, number 3. I'm going to put a screw through it, or a bolt. Another bolt. Okay. Okay, and there you go. Now it's seated. Oh, that's a little bit off. Put it here. Okay. So now with those ones, you're gonna grab 2 other bolts as well. You're gonna put them in. Okay, then you can go from underneath, get your thread lock out. And so what you're gonna do is you're gonna put a dab of thread lock on all those bolts. Okay, with that, I'm gonna get 4 nuts. Just gonna feed them under. Okay, and so with that, I'm gonna get my wrench now, as well as my ratchet, and I'm gonna start tightening those 4 bolts. Okay, so these are basically tight now, so you can get rid of it, and now get rid of these 2 boxes on the side, which you only need for that part, and you start smoothing out the silicone over here. Okay, so just start to smooth out the silicone. You start at the valve stem hole, okay? And it helps if your hands are a little bit wet. And work it right here. We'll go over it a couple times. And while doing this, you'll notice that sometimes there's a whole bunch of gaps and stuff. So what we're gonna end up doing is going back with the silicone sealant, and we're gonna fill in any of those portions so we give it a nice, smooth, solid finish to prevent any leaks. All right, that's it. So now, I'll get a better shot. You can see the silicone is a really nice, solid, straight area. So that's gonna prevent all your leaks. And now the rest of the steps is just tightening down all your bolts and torquing them. All right, so now that we've basically laid down the sealant, we've smoothed it out. There's 4 bolts in there that are hand tight. So they're good to go to hold everything. Now we're gonna go ahead and drop the rest of the bolts in. And then after we drop the rest of the bolts in, we're gonna go in, thread lock them, as well as hand tight them all. Then after we hand tight all those bolts, we're gonna go back with a torque wrench over here and torque them all to, well, for RS's, and we're using old bolts, it's 22 foot-pounds of torque. Here, I'll talk about that now as well. For wheels, if you get brand new bolts to put them in, you're gonna do them to whatever the manufacturer suggests. So you can call up your manufacturer, look it up online, etc. Once you do that, you can figure out how many pounds you need to torque it down to. Okay, so for new bolts, like for these, if these are all new bolts, it would be 44 foot-pounds of torque. However, since I'm reusing the old bolts, it's going to be half the torque rating. So I'm only going to torque these down to 22 foot-pounds. So that's basically like an overall guideline. If you're doing your wheels, to do them half of whatever the new bolts say you should. And if you cannot find any specs, and your manufacturer is no longer in business, like a lot of old school JDM wheels and stuff, if you can't find any of those specs, then what I suggest you doing is just torquing them down between between 15 to 25 pounds in general. I'd say around 20 to 25 pounds would be the safe zone for usually any old bolts. That's the given range you want to be torquing them down to. So these are going to be torqued down to 22 foot-pounds. Okay, so now it's time to torque your wheels, all your bolts on them. So you're going to start at the valve stem again, torque it, okay, which is over here. I'll flip it over. You're gonna start your valve stem, torque it, go over here, torque it, go down here, torque it, go over here, torque it, and then just start boom, 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 boom. You can just go around and start torquing them to whatever. And like I said with the specifications already, if you don't know the specifications, I'd say roughly between 20 to 25 foot-pounds of torque is good enough for almost any 3-piece wheels. Okay, and torque them down like that. Now that everything is torqued down, basically your wheel is done. If you want, you can go ahead and smooth out this silicone bead again if you want. Mine's already smooth. I mainly found that it was necessary just to do it once. After that, it was really just unneeded. And then you want to go ahead and clean up your wheel. Any silicone that might have slipped through around the center and the lip, go ahead and clean that up. That way it doesn't get stuck there. Go ahead and if you want, polish your lips again and clean everything up. So now that everything is cleaned up, we're ready for the finishing touches. One of the most important is the center cap. There you go. And then after that, we got to put in the valve stem. Last but not least are the valve stems. Usually when you reassemble your wheels, you want to put in new valve stems, but if you can't find ones that fit, or if you just don't want to downgrade, you know, maybe the quality isn't as good, or you want to just reuse the OEM ones like I want to do, what you have to do is, well, first make sure the rubber is soft, then placing your valve stem, and on the other side there's another part of the seal because you need to screw these on. I'm just going to take some silicone and rub it over with my fingers on here, and then I'm going to place it on there. That way it creates a stronger seal just in case these ones are old, even though they're still soft. Okay, so to sum up this process, you're going to make sure your barrels, centers, and lips are all clean. The contact point in between them, you can take some paint stripper, just clean them off right before you assemble them. Also make sure that there's no silicone still on them from previously. You should have already cleaned that off with like a wire wheel. After that, you're going to lay a bead of silicone on your barrel, a bead of silicone on your lip, and then once you assemble it, you're going to lay the center on the barrel, and then you're going to lay the lip on top of the center, making sure to match up with the original point in which these were assembled. So right here is that point, right? The valve stem, the barrel is where it's supposed to be, the lip is where it's supposed to be, and the center is right where it's supposed to be. If your wheel is assembled with the barrel, then the lip, and then the center on top, you're only going to need one bead of silicone, and that is between the barrel and the lip. That silicone is going to be in the description as mentioned earlier. The model number is GE5000. Okay, after you've laid your lip on top and everything is basically sitting there, you can put one bolt in here, one bolt in here over here, one bolt in over here, one bolt in over here. You're going to go put thread lock on all 4 of those. Hand tighten them with a ratchet of some sort, or you can just do it, you know, with 2 wrenches, whatever you have on hand. Tighten those hand tight. Then you're going to go flip your wheels up, smooth out the silicone. Then after you smooth out your silicone, you can go ahead and drop the rest of your bolts in. Then doing about 4 at a time, because I found that was the easiest. Put thread lock on 4 of the bolts, thread on with your hand 4 of the bolts, and then come up and hand tighten them. And just do that all the way around. Then once you've done that, you can go ahead and torque your bolts. And so the way you're going to torque your bolts is from starting here, going over here, then this bolt, and then this bolt. Basically those 4 corners. And once you've done that, you can go ahead and torque around, just one after the other after the other. For torque specs, BBS RS's with brand new bolts, that's 44 foot-pounds of torque. If you're reusing old bolts like I am, it's 22 foot-pounds of torque, so cut in half. If you need to know what you want to use, then you should contact your manufacturer, just call them up or by email and see what they say to torque them down to. If you can't find them, I find that a lot of the wheels seem to fall between 20 to 30 pounds for tightening them and torquing them. I'd say on the safe side for old bolts, it would be around 20 to 25 foot-pounds of torque. So if you don't have those specs, I would suggest using either between 20 to 25 foot-pounds of torque, or you can go on wheelwhores.com and you can post up a thread and asking that, or go use the search button like a normal person would. Then after that, just throw on your center caps, throw on your valve stems, and essentially you're good to go. Just make sure, you know, blue Loctite. Yeah, that's it. Wait 24 hours before you put any tires, air them up, etc. Because you have to wait for the silicone to dry. You're gonna have to wait for your thread lock to dry and seal completely. So just be careful of that. And other than that, thanks for watching. I hope these instructions weren't too rushed, because while I was doing them, it was over 100 degrees out and the silicone was starting to seal, so a lot of the stuff was one takes. So thanks for watching. I hope that helped you out, and now you can go enjoy your finished 3-piece wheels. Alright, thanks. Much better, right?